Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the South African Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Terence Mentor and I'm a digital marketer who's realized that since this industry is constantly changing, we need to be constantly learning. And I think the best way to learn all of the things is to talk to the people who are doing all of the things. So this podcast is a chance to do just that. In this episode, I had a chance to chat to Matt Brownell, whose career has led him to the position of fractional CMO. Now, if you're like me, you may not have known up until this point what a fractional CMO is. Don't worry about that because Matt explains all of that in this episode. We'll also discuss the mistakes that some businesses make in the early stages of developing their marketing team, how he uses AI effectively in his everyday work, and what kind of personality is best suited to the CMO role. Let's get right into it. Here's Matt.
I'm Matt Brownell. I'm currently based out of Cape Town, and my career has taken many winding paths. I'm a non-traditional marketer. I started in the world of management consulting, but I, at the moment, am a fractional CMO for a couple of clients, and I'm in the process of starting my own tech startup up.
Okay, so there's a lot of things going on in your life at the moment. I want to kind of focus in on that idea of a fractional CMO because I got to be honest, when I was checking up on you, I think this is the first time I've heard of the term fractional CMO, and I'm like, did he just make that up? And then when I actually did some research, I realized, oh no, this is a well-defined term, and it's a position that's existed for a while. But can you tell us what a fractional CMO is? Like, how would you define a fractional CMO?
I think it's one of those terms that, like, if you look at Google Trends, it's one of those breakout terms in the last year. Like, suddenly everyone's a fractional something. A fractional CTO, fractional CPO, fractional CMO. I guess in many respects, I was looking to find a term that would say, hey guys, I'm available to do interesting part-time style work as a very strategic leader, but I'm not available as a potential CMO for anyone. But anyway, to get back to the point, like, what is it really? Like, I often describe it as you get 100% of my brain, but only pay for 20% of my time. It's kind of as simple as that. Like, I have thankfully had 15 to 20 years of like really fascinating experience across many different life cycles of startups, big business, etc. And most of my customers are in the stage of their business development where they're in like the early mobilization phase, very early stage, moving towards growth or scale. So mostly in the startup style world. And genuinely, it wouldn't make sense to have a full-time like strategic leader or CMO in the business. It just doesn't make sense. So they have relatively small marketing teams with smart sort of mid-level style marketers, which is what they can afford. But they lack that strategic leadership that can set vision, set 12-month roadmaps, and kind of drive some of the executional stuff without being in the weeds. And a fractional CMO is actually a fantastic tool. So you can grab a very strategic marketing leader with a lot of experience for 4 to 8 hours a week instead of 5 days a week. And that is enough to pretty much allow the strategic leadership aspect to tick over and to go and to make an impact. So I think it's a bit of a win-win. If you're the kind of person that gets a kick out of working on multiple projects and multiple brands in different phases, and you love that kind of dynamic nature, it's great to be a fractional CMO. That's what I've learned in the last year. And I think my clients generally are very happy with the amount of impact that I can provide for a relatively affordable amount of time.
So do you find that you are, because when you're working full-time for one company, there tends to be a lot of like, I don't want to say dead time, but time that's not used as effectively as possible. Whereas if you're working full-time, but that's spread across 3 or 4 different organizations, are you finding that like every hour is as effective and efficient as it could be?
Yes, actually, like the onus is on me to make sure that you get bang for buck, right? And I think most of the value proposition that I can provide is guys, I can save you weeks, months of wasted time, of dead ends that I've seen, like, don't go down that path, go down this path, think about doing it this way. And therefore an hour of time can potentially save like multiples of that just by helping with the decision-making process. But because my time is literally charged by the hour, I'm hyper rigorous about how I use my time. So even to the extent that like I only Uber so that I can work in the back of an Uber and utilize that time effectively.
Right. So like traveling time is not
an
an issue for you as well.
Travel time is like work time. That's kind of what I do. Having said that, my days are extremely dynamic and therefore extremely like energizing. I don't feel like I'm against the clock or anything like that. So it really depends on your personality type and if you like to juggle multiple balls and if you're comfortable with consistent context switching. And I use AI a lot on a day-to-day basis to help me be effective, to be honest with you. I think with a co-pilot like that, and I've had to learn how to use it really well this year, I think I can be like quite significantly more effective than if I didn't have that a year ago.
Right, because the grind stuff, the writing, the putting together spreadsheets, AI helps you with that, but the human side, you're still doing. I'm trying not to be the guy who battles against AI, but I do like finding where there are effective use cases where it takes out the nitty-gritty stuff and allows us to be, more creative, more free, more, frees us up to do the good stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, is that there's this idea of the AI enhanced marketer, where previously, if the constructive marketing was kind of a pyramid, you would spend very little of your time, and the top was strategy and the bottom was execution. You would spend very little of your time at the top because execution took so long. So you'd actually be thin on strategy and quite deep on execution or broad execution. With effective use of AI, you can flip that pyramid around and you can spend more time on the strategy, because as you get further down to the executional aspects, you can actually roll that stuff out really fast. Because if you have super strong strategy, insights-driven work or data-driven work, really like the executional part that stems from it, whether it's copy or creative ideas, or like that can really happen quite quickly. And I think that's how you got to think about it, is it gives you the chance to spend more on strategy, because that part, no large language model is going to really nail it. Yet.
No, never. We're going to let's put a stop to this nonsense right now. So you've mentioned that a big part of your work is helping these organizations and businesses not go down the wrong path, make the right decision early on to save them, significant pain later down the line. What are some of those common mistakes that startups and new businesses do that you would tend to go, whoa, stop right there? That is a clear mistake. We got to do this the other way. What are some of the mistakes that you see happening?
I think they happen. The most like visceral one, which is very ubiquitous, is team setup and people structural setup. So what kind of marketer do you need at what stage of the journey? What are you looking for? And how do you set up the team for success? That is the number one challenge, I would say, that everyone that I've worked with this year is facing. They have hired the wrong person at the wrong time. They are struggling with the makeup of the team. They don't know how to combine in-house resources with agency partners. And I think this world has shifted a lot in the last 10 years. And I think the setups of early stage marketing teams are often very, very, very flawed. And what that does is it creates this little cycle within the business of people losing faith. What is marketing able to achieve? What is the role of marketing? Why do I feel like I'm not getting my bang for my buck? Why do I feel like there's constant churn happening? And why do I feel like I'm constantly just in a hiring phase? And I think so much is about quickly being able to assess the skill sets required and quickly being able to help get the right team into place and bolstering on the freelancers, guns for hire, agency partners that you need at various phases. I think the massive bonus when you have a lot of experience in this space is you can kind of look 6 months in advance and be like, guys, you know what we're going to need? We're going to need a really good little digital agency with the following kind of skill sets based on the channels that we're heading into. Or we're just going to need like a small agile PR agency to help us here. And I have those contacts. So you don't have to go out and ask a million people's opinions or get a random referral. It's like, don't worry, I know exactly who you should work with. I worked with them for many years, I think that's the major thing. The other thing is just a lack of channel understanding and putting the cart before the horse from a channel perspective. Until you've figured out the channels that really work for you from a marketing standpoint, you actually don't know the skill sets that you need, the data that you need, the structures that you need to set up, etc. So there's a lot of channel experimentation required. And I think between channel and people, those are the two major ones. There's a process which I go through with my clients called a marketing maturity framework, where it's just a nice little way to, there's 7 like major competencies that I've basically worked through, which is things like content, people, brand, customer knowledge, channels, data, etc. And literally like kind of audit and score you, like where are you from like early stage mobilization to like really leading edge on these things. And then you can kind of figure out the plan from there. Like, okay, the focus needs to be on people, content, and channels, or needs to be on data, brand, and operating model, as an example. And that's a nice way to frame it, because then you generally have founders or execs that love frameworks because it helps them navigate this complex world. They're like, okay, cool, I get it now. Like, we're trying to move channels from here to here, people from here to here. And that takes this broad church of marketing, which is quite complicated and subjective, and breaks it down into like very understandable chunks. And then you just take on those chunks.
That's pretty cool, because you're building that structure of the marketing department, like that's in a visual way for people.
Yeah.
Do you find that a lot of people maybe have a little bit of they might be a little bit overconfident in their understanding in marketing? Like, people who are not marketers think they understand and just naturally get marketing?
Yeah. This is one of the major challenges, right? And I'm sure a lot of people that you speak to talk about this, but because marketing, the discipline of marketing has never become professionalized, in the sense that there's a professional body that manages it. There's like this very like well-structured process you go to become qualified within it. It's this, and that's partly the joy of it. It's this kind of mix of creative plus science, but everyone thinks that they get it because everyone has a subjective opinion about what they like or what they don't like in marketing. Super subjective. It's not like finance, where it's like pretty black and white. So the vast majority of particularly execs or founders of businesses like have a strong opinion about marketing, but their opinion is extremely surface level, and there's an over confidence that things are simple. There's just a feeling that, well, why isn't that simple? That seems very simple. Just make it blue and put it out there. You know, there's like a lot of that kind of education.
I heard a story once about I heard the story about how they changed the button and increased their sales by 100,000%.
Exactly.
You know, just do that.
Exactly. Just do that. Yeah, and I think that that's, I think, in many respects, the advantage of having a strategic marketing leader like fractional CMO style, because hopefully that comes with a degree of trust that says, cool, this human understands what they're talking about. I'm going to let them have the opinions, and I'm going to take a step back. Of course, that doesn't always happen, but hopefully that happens over the course of time, because there's just a degree of trust that gets built, and cool, we're in good hands. Like, actually, this isn't what I wanted to spend my time on. Like, let marketers do marketing. But of course, you have to also show it in the results. Like, it's got to ultimately translate into some kind of quantitative measure, because otherwise it's just making things look pretty, and it ultimately often turns down to design. Like that becomes like this almost very like simplistic reality of like, oh, do things look good? Like, that's of course not how you build brands and not how you build channels and build moats, but it is a starting up point of it. But like, that's not what marketing is. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding.
And do you find that maybe, you know, these startups who might not have, or at least these founders who might not have loads of, you know, in-depth experience in you know, a larger marketing team, do you find they kind of get stuck in one channel of marketing? Like, they just think about brand, or they're just thinking about advertising, you know, they're just thinking about social media. If that happens, I suppose that's where your structure then kind of opens their minds up a bit to the fact that, oh, wait a second, there's all of these other pillars that we have to be working on.
Yes.
Do you find you have to be doing a lot of advocating for that kind of stuff in the boardroom? You know, when I'm thinking of a CMO.
Massively so. I mean, I think Although my title wasn't CMO at Yoko in my previous life, I was in many respects, I was like the VP of commercial, which was kind of looking after marketing and sales. It could have been called CMO in another business. And I think that the constant advocacy at a boardroom level is simply a reality no matter what scale or size of business that you're in, because there is an oversimplification of marketing and there is a misunderstanding about its potential impact and its role. And there is just the base reality that the vast majority of good marketing is long-term. And whether you believe in like the long and the short of it and like where you spend your time, and there's something called the Bineton field rule, which is 60% long, 40% short term, whatever's right for your business. When we talk about marketing, we're talking about something that you do today, and in reality, you see the results 6 to 12 months from now, sometimes longer, sometimes 3 years from now. And therefore, there's a genuine problem in terms of ability to deliver on impact that everyone sees. And, a lot of times people look back and say like, wow, that was like an absolutely transformative period, like incredible moat that we've now built. But at the time, there's questions around like, are we spending too much money? Is this the right thing to do? Is it working or not? You just often don't get the signals. Like those signals are slow. And it's not like, and people misunderstand that. They think that digital marketing or performance marketing is short-term in nature, whereas that has been proven to be incorrect as well, with the exception of Google AdWords, which is pretty much like 80% short range. Like everything else is long range, actually. Meta advertising is long range. SEO is long range. Like those kind of things are not like push the button today, see the results tomorrow. It's a slow burn process. So it's a tricky place to work. And that's why CMOs traditionally have some of the shortest tenures at a boardroom level.
Which is why fractional CMOs sometimes is a useful position to fall in. I do know that, just off that, this idea of like attribution is becoming a very big conversation piece because, with the business that I'm currently working in, the sales cycles are super long. Like we're talking 5 to 10 year sales cycles. So how do you say that this particular contract that has been signed was influenced by some marketing endeavor from 10 years ago? There's no ways to make that connection. Or even, what 20 little steps or 200 steps between here and there got us there. And so we do find that at least what I've seen is that there are these cycles of, marketing is really important, we've got to do more marketing. And then a few years later, we don't have to do that much marketing, we haven't really seen the benefit of it. But as we start to say that, the wave almost of the impact from 3 or 4 years ago hits the company, and suddenly everyone's like, wow, we're doing so well. You see, we did less marketing and we're doing so well. They make the wrong connection at the wrong time. With your, and this is what I found interesting because, you spoke again earlier about needing to justify the impact, justify the decisions with data and results. But how do you do that in a space where, like we're saying, a lot of the work we're doing is long term, and I suppose even for you, it's even more so because you're more on the strategy. So how do you convince a organization or a business, hey, the strategy that I've been doing for the last 3 to 6 months is valid, even though we haven't seen results come flooding in yet?
I think what's fascinating for me is just to answer maybe a couple of points you made there. One is attribution is fundamentally broken and is only going to get more broken. So if we spend our lives trying to attribute and draw connected dots between the myriad touch points that happen in a buying journey, we're just wasting time. It is simple as that. The reality of marketing is that we live in an age of, we have never known more about the science of marketing. And there are some doyens out there, the Mark Ritsons, the Byron Sharps, the Bineton Fields, etc., that have really created this Bible of marketing effectiveness, which has been proven over and over and over again with longitudinal studies, very large base sizes in terms of the kind of quant surveys that have happened, that there are some philosophical and fundamental realities of marketing which generally are applicable across category, business type, business stage. And therefore, in many respects, the mature approach to marketing, and it's hard because that's a hard thing to land for a lot of people, is to say, we believe in the following 5 things. We believe we should spend a portion of our revenue on marketing. We believe we should split that in a particular way between long and short range style marketing. We believe that the following set of channels are going to be the ones that will work in the long run. And we believe in creativity or not. We believe in data-driven decision-making or not. But I think once you get those beliefs down and you attach them to like pretty solid science nowadays about what does or doesn't work, you should be able to park the debates to some extent and then concentrate on like really excellent execution, because it's the lack of knowledge that drives that kind of roundabout nature of like invest, pull back, invest, pull back. It's like some things just require a very strong like philosophy. And one thing that I do and I like doing is write down the philosophy. What's your marketing philosophy? Get everyone on the same page about it. And if you can write down 5 bullet points or 10 bullet points about what you believe, those things shouldn't change, to be honest with you. They may shift, you may learn more, it may evolve. I'm not suggesting it doesn't like shift in some respects, but like some things should be pretty consistent. And it sounds easier than it is though.
And that's where you need a Matt to come in and help you make those decisions based on experience. So you're not starting from scratch all the time. So I'm starting to see the value of a fractional CMO. I had a vague idea, but I'm starting to get more on your camp here, Matt. So can we get into a little bit of the nitty gritty of what would happen when you maybe start with a new business? If the business that you're starting with has no marketing department whatsoever, brand new business that started up, there's 2 founders and like 2 or 3 tech people who are, maybe 1 or 2 salespeople, but they've now decided, wait a second, we need to really get this marketing thing going. Let's get Matt in. What is the first position in the marketing department that you would recommend being hired?
I mean, the first thing I would say is don't hire me, because it's the wrong time. There is no ways that you need a senior marketer at my hourly rate, whatever that is, to come in and give you advice from day 0. Because what's going to end up happening is I'm going to end up writing your LinkedIn posts, setting up your social media channels. It's completely poor use of your money. So I would say that in that example, I would provide some free counseling and say, guys, you're probably looking for this kind of profile person. I can give you the profile. I can give it to you in 20 minutes, no problem. Like, here it is. This is what you should be thinking about. This is what you should be looking for. You want me to be part of the process of hiring that person in for you? Maybe that's not a bad idea. That's maybe a task that I could do very simply on the side. But until you have a little mobilized marketing unit that is moving and that you have some like all of the foundations, at least a little bit in place, I would say it's too early for a fractional CMO to be doing anything besides maybe a very short-term little project, like a little bit of setup maybe. That's something that you could do. So it's more of a project-based thing rather than a fractional CMO. And I think one thing, maybe we should talk about this a little bit in the sense that the definition of a fractional CMO to me is someone who is embedded in your business. They are not someone who is doing a hit-and-run project. That's a consultant. You want some consultancy style work? Like, cool, that's one thing. Fractional CMO is I'm in the leadership team meetings. I'm there on a Monday, setting the priorities for the week with the team. I'm checking in on a Friday as to how things have gone. I'm writing the quarterly strategic plan. I'm building next year's 12-month roadmap. That's what I'm doing. So like there is no aspect, like, and the more context that you have, the more embedded you are, the more impact you can have. If you whiffling on the side, in and out a little bit, like you just don't have the context to be able to make the right decisions and to help out. So I would say the minimum is 8 hours a week, 1 day a week. And that 8 hours could be split across 2 or 3 days, which is generally what my week is. Quite heavy on a Monday, setting up the team for success, a little bit of check-in towards the back end of the week to see how things are going, an hour here or there on certain particular projects. And very, very, very important prioritization between what's important versus what's urgent. And the urgent executional stuff done by the team, long-range important stuff, generally falls in my camp to do. And I think that that's kind of an important split. Without a team, there's limited impact. There's almost none. In fact, I would say that it's just the wrong model, and therefore use a consultant. But okay, let's assume that that scenario is still played out. I would be saying, like, you set up a team for success by finding a really strong T-shaped style marketer who has enough experience to be able to do more than executional work, where they proactively know this is the 4 things I'm going to go and try and do, has a very experimental mindset, has experience in early stage companies. There is a world of difference between people that have only walked in a corporate marketing team and those that have worked in a startup or early stage marketing team. In fact, I would never, ever propose that someone who's in a startup style environment hires anyone from a corporate marketing environment unless they have had strong experience. Just don't do it. They're just going to struggle from day one. It's going to take them a year, then they're going to leave, and it's going to be a problem. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I would give in terms of hiring in that early stage team and setting it up for success. Some of the foundations, some of the tools, etc. But then I would say, hey, call me when that team is two to 3 people big, and then you want someone that's more embedded. Then I think we can make things happen.
In that kind of space, then, when maybe you're coming in and you're joining a team that already exists, but you're really joining them as the leader of the team. This is maybe more of a people question than a process question. How do you get the pre-existing marketing team on your side? I mean, I would love you to be my boss. That's fine. But not everyone's a Terrence. And marketers come in all shapes and sizes and personalities. Do you have to, is there a little bit of psychology and a bit of people managing that you've had to do, where you've had to, like, wait, I'm coming in as the leader of this team, but I've needed to come in gently?
Yeah, I think gently is probably the right term for it. I think in many respects, I don't know many people that have this fractional CMO thing. I don't know their personality types. I don't know what would set them up for success. My leadership style is very, very growth orientated. It's like, I'm here to help you. I'm here to grow you. I am extremely unpolitical in that regards. Like, really, like, I would hope that the majority of people would see it as a great opportunity to learn and grow and get someone who's not going to be, I provide a ton of space. So I think, like, there's some like leadership tenets which would be important in this example. And those tenets are, how you approach the team, how you set them up for success, how you orientate what's the positive reality of having someone come in who's senior, who can help out. I have yet to find people responding in a very negative way. It's usually been like, oh, great, we have some help here. Like, oh, great, we have someone who can help us fight the fight in the boardroom level. Because that's often the challenge, right? Is that if you are struggling to convince a founding team what to do, how to do it, and with strong opinions in that regard, actually it's super helpful to have someone to, like, cut through that and be like, hey, whether you're right or wrong, like, hey, let's go on this journey together. And, like, I have the ear of someone at a boardroom level.
That's yeah. I can totally attest to that. When you have someone who, you're coming in and you're hired to advocate for the marketing team. I can imagine there must be that level of relief of, okay, finally there's someone who gets, who speaks our language and who can translate it into founder speak.
Yeah, that's a great point, by the way. It's like this idea of, like, how do you translate it into founder speak? And that only comes with time in that environment, which I've been lucky enough to have with incredible founders around me. So I think that's unintended bonus in many respects of this kind of model.
So you are, maybe just shifting, I know I only booked you for half an hour, so I'll cut this last week short, I promise. Okay, cool. I know you're busy. You probably have an hour booked for one of your organizations, but
we're talking. You just go for it.
Oh yes, I got an hour of fractional CMO time for free today.
Yeah, I'll send you the ball later.
We're talking about founders, and you're also yourself a founder. You're also starting up your own startup. How do you feel you're going to be able to manage that space where you're now playing not just the marketer CMO role, but now this additional role of the founder, are you going to be bringing in eventually, do you see yourself maybe one day with your organization and with your business bringing in a fractional CMO to support you? Or do you feel like, wait a second, I've got this? Are you going to be the founder that we're talking about who thinks they know what they're talking about?
That's a great question. I think that I would, I may struggle to bring in someone else to do that aspect of the business. I feel like it's my genius zone. I don't know. I've never thought about it. I think in many respects, I'm in such an early stage with my partner and I on our own startup that we are in the grind. We are in the setting up social media channels, building a brand, building a website. Like it's all so hands on, and I love it. I love that. That there's just so much joy that comes from being in the weeds, which is something that like I missed when you start getting into like these leadership roles where you're not in the weeds really. Like of course you have to every now and again deep dive in there. You've got to get stuck in, but generally you've mostly got to get out of the way of your team and trust that you hired the right people to do their jobs. Now there is no one. There's me and my founding partner, and we have employee number one. And between us, we have to do everything. And I find a lot of my time is in sales conversations with potential new customers, which is a new space for me. And the rest of my time is in building sales decks and websites and figuring out an SEO strategy. And I think, therefore, there will probably be a time where that kind of stuff gets handed over, hopefully, if the business does what we hope it will do. But certainly, it's no time anytime soon. So check back in with me a year from now.
And do you find it now with that experience of the being in the weeds, as you say, as a founder, do you feel like maybe you have a better understanding of the other founders that you've worked with or that you are currently working with? Like, oh, wait a second, I understand why you're anxious about this because I'm anxious about the same thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that even in the space of a few months, and we're only a few months in, I think the mindset of a founder is something that I'm understanding more and more. And I think that, I'm not a founder yet, really. That wouldn't be true. There is like something that started, that's germinating, that we are in stealth mode on, that we're quite close to kind of launching. But at the same time, I'm not dealing with what a founder of a sort of small to medium-sized business is dealing with, which is trying to stay alive, and that's a job which, in part of me looks forward to doing one day, and part of me already sees how hard it is. So yes, I have more empathy for sure. I also have more empathy for people that are just in the kind of small business startup phase and how hard it is, and how you're constantly in a crisis of confidence of, is this the right thing? Are we doing it the right way? Where's the traction going to come from? Are we thinking too small? Are we thinking too big? I just think you just constantly, these questions are churning in your brain. And already I know for a fact that if I didn't have someone to bounce that off, in the likes of my founding partner, like it would be a lot harder. I don't know how people do solo entrepreneurship, actually. I think that is a hard thing.
Definitely not for me. I'm too risk averse for that kind of endeavor. Okay, this is honestly my last question for you though, because as we were talking, I'm realizing that there's been a lot of conversation around CMOs and this idea that is kind of like the end point of every marketer's career. Like everyone is working towards being a CMO one day. And I'm starting to question whether or not that's true. And maybe just to end, do you feel like what kind of person should be a CMO and what kind of person should maybe think about just rather specializing in their own niche of marketing?
That's a great question. I think it really, in the end, boils down to how much you enjoy leading people, I think. In any decent-sized business, a CMO's role is mostly around people management and leadership specifically. If you're the kind of person that gets joy and energy from building teams, leading teams, setting visions, evangelizing, advocating, and also taking the hits at a very pressurized boardroom level, then you're going to thrive in that environment, because all of the underlying fundamentals of marketing, which are so alluring, like the science and the magic and the creative part of it, which for me is the really like energy enhancing part, are still there. You get to show great work, do great work. You get to conceptualize great work still, but you're doing it through others. You're not doing it very directly. And I do believe the best leaders are still pretty hands-on in many respects, but genuinely give space to their people to do their jobs. And I think, therefore, if you don't love that, if you don't love managing people and leading for like impact, then that shouldn't be what you aspire to. And I do think in many respects, it's a fairly binary thing. Some people love leading others, some people don't. And you'll know early on in your career which camp you fall into. And it doesn't mean you may not change, but I think intuitively most people know if they are going to be good at that and love it or not. And ultimately it comes down to, what do you get your energy from? Because if it's draining to lead others, like, you're just going to hate your job, actually. And leadership is not draining to me. I love it. At the same time, I was ready to take a break from it after 7 or 8 years at Joko. So like, it is the kind of thing that sometimes you just need an era of self-management, where, you know, you create your own problems and deal with your own problems, but they're your problems. And I'll be ready again in the future to lead a team. Hopefully it's my own team that I've built from scratch. That's what I hope for. And I look forward to that. And it's one of the reasons why we've started this business, is because we want to build our own team. And I love that. But yeah, definitely not for everyone. And you can make a great career and be super successful being a deep T-shaped marketer with specific technical or strategic abilities. You know, you can have a great career, and therefore that's what the end goal should look like.
A big thank you to Matt for his time and experience. If you want to hear more from him, you can follow him on LinkedIn. I'll put a link to his profile in the show notes. And also a big thank you to you for listening to this first episode of Season 2 of the SA Digital Marketing Podcast. If you are listening on Spotify, please leave a comment in the app and I'll respond to you there. Otherwise, you can send your thoughts, opinions, and questions to podcast@tmdigital.co.za. That's T for Tango, M for Mother, digital.co.za. And of course, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. This was the SA Digital Marketing Podcast.